LeBron James just put the NBA on notice. At All-Star Weekend in Cleveland, he was as open and honest about his NBA future as he has been in years, even discussing a possible return to Cleveland. But what I want to talk to you about today is even crazier. The possibility of LeBron James and his son Bronny being a package deal in his final season in the NBA. That might not seem like a big deal, but I'm going to explain why this is actually a massive piece of news for the NBA. My name is Tucker. Thank you for clicking on the video. I really appreciate it. Okay, so first of all, what was said? Basically, LeBron came out and said his final season in the NBA, his goal, his plan is to play with his son. No matter where Bronny is in the NBA, assuming he's there at that point, which we'll get to later, LeBron wants to be on his team. This is something that has been rumored for a long, long time, but for him to actually come out and confirm it as part of his plan is a big deal. It allows these other teams to really start planning for this. The other interesting part of this as well is Bronny wouldn't even be eligible to declare for the NBA draft until 2024 at the absolute earliest, which gives us an idea of how much longer LeBron might be sticking around in the league. He's at least going to be around for a few more years, assuming that Bronny would get to the NBA as soon as possible. And that opens up a gigantic conversation. What it would do to Bronny's potential draft stock, if he would even make it into the NBA, if there's any indication of that at this point, and what that means for the rest of LeBron's career in terms of which team or teams he could play for over the next couple of seasons. First, let's assume that Bronny is good enough to make it into the NBA. We'll get into that discussion a little bit more later on, but let's just make that assumption for now. If Bronny is a top 5, a top 10 prospect in his draft class, would the possibility of LeBron joining your team after drafting Bronny change his draft stock at all? Let's say he's the 5th best player in the class. Would he be the number 1 pick, the number 2 pick in the class? Or if he's a top 10 player, would he go up higher than that? Or if he's, in my opinion, much more likely a late first round or a second round prospect, would his draft stock increase significantly solely because of the fact that LeBron would, in his own words, publicly now, join your team via free agency or otherwise if you drafted his son? Now, there's 2 different arguments to this. One side is, of course, absolutely, even just from a financial, monetary perspective as a franchise, to have Bronny and LeBron's farewell season on your team would be an incredibly lucrative thing for your basketball team in terms of tickets, in terms of TV stuff. You'd be on national TV all the time, no matter what team you were. If LeBron does stay true to his word and actually does go and play with his son, it would be an incredible opportunity for a team. Not to mention the fact that in the scenario that he is a top 5, a top 10 prospect in his class, he's obviously very good, so you want to have him on your basketball team anyway. Now, the other side of this is you only get LeBron for 1 year. At that point, assuming we're talking about 2024, LeBron will be even older, the very, very late stages of his career. If he's still an all-star level player, I wouldn't be shocked, but it's still just 1 year of LeBron, most likely. And you have to take him at his word that he would actually join wherever Bronny went. He said that it isn't about the money anymore. He would sign for the minimum. He would do whatever he needed to do. But like, if Bronny goes to Orlando, do we really think that LeBron's going to spend his final season in the NBA with the Magic? Maybe, but it's not necessarily a guarantee. And also, what if his kid's just not any good? Like, what if his kid makes it to the NBA, but he doesn't actually play? LeBron's just going to be there and play for the Magic, but his kid's not actually going to play. Is he just going to be there to kind of mentor him through his first NBA season? There's a lot of different aspects to get into this, but it's not as clean cut as Bronny's 100% going to be a top 5 pick. LeBron goes with him and they play together throughout his final season in the league. Which leads me to a really interesting aspect of this. We're operating under the assumption that LeBron is going to be able to time this perfectly, and he's going to be a free agent at whatever point Bronny decides to come to the league, and then he's going to go wherever he goes via free agency. He's going to go follow Bronny there. LeBron doesn't do anything on accident, and he's planned out a lot of things really well in his career, but there's no way he can predict when his son is going to go to the NBA. I think he's operating under the assumption right now that Bronny's going to be eligible in 2024. He'll leave himself open as a free agent in that offseason, but what if it doesn't make sense for him to go into the draft in 2024? What if he's not as good initially in college as everybody hopes that he would be? Is LeBron then going to opt in for another year and wait for 2025? Or, more interestingly, would he either force a trade out of the team he was currently playing for, or really push the team that he is playing for to trade for the draft rights for Bronny? Let's say, for example, LeBron is still with the Lakers in 2024. And he's either under contract for the next couple of seasons or doesn't want to leave the Lakers, really likes his situation. Would he really, really push for the Lakers to get back into that draft? Because it's unlikely they'd have the pick, given all the things that they owe to New Orleans for the Anthony Davis trade. Would he go to management and say, I need to play with my son. I need you to do whatever you can to get him. If you don't I need you to trade me to where Bronny goes. There's a lot of logistics here and you can get really dramatic with it. But the point is, it's going to be more difficult for him to do this than him just saying, I'm going to sign with him. Unless you can absolutely guarantee that Bronny is going to be good enough to be draft eligible in 2024 and be a relatively high pick. Bron can leave himself open to free agency in 2024 and go from there. Other than that, he would just have to continue to sign one-on-one deals and opt in or opt out based off where Bronny went. And that is just an incredible amount of logistical hurdles to overcome. And if anybody can do it, I'm sure it would be LeBron. He's planned out so many things. He didn't do this by accident. Certainly, he almost never does anything by accident in the media. But that is just a lot to unpack. But now the last piece of the equation. None of this matters if Bronny doesn't make it into the NBA. So what's the likelihood that that's actually going to happen? Well, right now, ESPN has him ranked as the 43rd ranked player, I should say, in the 2023 high school class. So he would then go to college for a year, be eligible for the 2024 NBA draft. And he's clearly a very skilled player, can do anything you want out of a lead guard. But high school basketball evaluation as it relates to the NBA is just incredibly difficult. Unless you are truly a generational player, it's really difficult to tell if you're going to be a good NBA player. He doesn't have overwhelming size the way that LeBron did as a high school player, but there's no doubt that he's going to be a really good player in college. Beyond that, who really knows? But if you forced me to make a prediction here, I'd say that, yeah, Bronny's probably at least going to get drafted in the first or the second round in the NBA. He clearly is motivated to do so. He's going to be in a great college program or in a more fun situation, the G League. And simply put, I'm not going to bet on the son of the greatest basketball player of this generation that is also clearly very good for his age, not making it into the league. Now, granted, the history of great NBA players' sons making a significant impact on the league is not great, but I'm fine being wrong on this. Right now, even given where he's ranked, I think he'll at least get drafted. Now, 43rd might seem relatively low when you're already talking about NBA for a kid, within their high school class, but there are plenty of players in the league right now that were that low or lower in their ESPN draft rankings and still made it to the league. Recent examples include Talen Horton-Tucker, Daniel Gafford, and Jordan Poole, among others. And even though the list of one and done players at this ranking isn't very long at all, that also assumes that Bronny will stay at his current ranking by the time that he's done with high school. And really, I think that's what this comes down to. If you're someone that's rooting for the possibility of LeBron and Bronny to play together in LeBron's final season in the league, I think the biggest obstacle is Bronny himself actually making it to the NBA. If he does, even if he's a late first round pick or even a second round pick, LeBron's going to find a way to make it happen. Even if his last season in the league isn't in Bronny's rookie year, at some point, he's going to find his way to his team. I just don't know if the kid's going to be able to make it. There's so much pressure on him, and an unbelievable amount of pressure, not only being LeBron James's kid and being a very good high school basketball player, but then having the pressure of knowing that your dad is, one, waiting on you, two, is getting older. It's not like LeBron's 32. He's going to be in his 40s if he doesn't get to the NBA immediately in 2024. And that's just a ton of pressure. And I am rooting for it. But like I said, I think the only real legitimate obstacle would be if he makes it to the league or not. But here's my ideal scenario. Here's what would be super, super fun for me personally is Bronny makes it. He's like the 7th, 8th, 9th best player in the 2024 NBA draft class. And then all these different teams around the league get to have this discussion, this conversation about the value of drafting him higher than you should, or talking yourself into him as a prospect in terms of what is his ceiling like, what could he become? Because if we draft him, we get LeBron as well. It's an unprecedented draft situation, and it's way more fun, it's way more interesting if he's at the top of his draft class rather than a late first round, a second round pick, or an undrafted player, because you really have to think about if there's not a one, Zion level player, Anthony Davis level player at the top of the class, maybe you start thinking about taking Bronny first, second, third, fourth, fifth, even if he's not actually that good relative to the other prospects in the class, because you get LeBron for a year, which at that point in his career might not mean as much as it does now, but I can't imagine he's going to be bad. You get the financial aspect of it. You get all the hype around it and all the attention. And you get two players with this pick. You only get 1 year LeBron, and you might be sacrificing a better draft prospect in that class. But I can almost guarantee you that there are some teams in the league that would absolutely do it. I'm thinking about, for example, let's say Sacramento is picking in the top 5 of the 2024 draft. If Bronny is available and he's a top 10 prospect and they get LeBron too, I don't see how they don't make that move. Now, again, there's no guarantee that LeBron would actually make this happen. He's said it, but there's no guarantee that he would actually go and play for Sacramento or Orlando or any of these other teams. Maybe he'll go back to Cleveland and play with Bronny. There's a ton of different ways this can work out, but this is such a weird, such an interesting, and ultimately such an intriguing circumstance and situation that we're going to pay attention to over the next couple of years, where LeBron could force his way to another team via trade to play with his kid. He could force the franchise to trade for the draft rights for Bronny, or Bronny might not make it to the league at all. This is super, super fun. That's the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Once again, my name is Tucker, and I'll see y'all next time.